It's hard to believe it's only been a few short months since my analysis of Shadow in Sonic Prime Season 2. And I guess, on balance, when I think back, we kinda left things on a bit of an unsure note for my boy. I mean, there was undoubtedly plenty of good, like the great voice acting, something Shadow has been sorely missing since Sonic 06. Ian Hanlon did a fantastic job here, like a David Humphrey-Jason Griffith hybrid.
I like it a lot.
And the show has done an excellent job of showcasing Shadow as a total badass and force to be reckoned with. There's no denying any of that. Shadow has been given more presence in his limited appearances in this show than he has for a long time in the games. Although that's not hard. But I guess my main cause for concern for Shadow in this show is that his dynamic with everyone just seems way off. So far, he's been entirely defined by his relationship with Sonic. And this is certainly not helped by how poorly written and characterized Sonic is in this show. Beyond that, Shadow hasn't really been given any ties to anyone else. He has history and even friendships with some of these characters, yet barely a word is ever exchanged between them. Maybe this comes down more to me having bigger expectations for Shadow in this series than the showrunners had planned. Or maybe this will all be addressed in Season 3, I guess we'll see. But real quick, before we dive in, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone for helping the channel reach 10,000 subscribers. It's really humbling to see so many people enjoying the content, and your support means so much to me. If you're new to the channel, or just haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We talk lots of nerdy, deep dive stuff in the Sonic universe here, as well as reviewing the games, movies, and TV shows. So hopefully there's a bit of something for everyone. And if you could also smash that like button, it would be super appreciated. But for now, let's get after it, shall we? As we've seen at the end of Season 2, Season 3 opens with 9 escaping with the Prism Shards, and Ghost Green Hill is now decaying into oblivion. Reluctantly accepting that at this stage what's done is done, despite how much he clearly wants to punch Sonic in the throat, you and everyone else, my friend, Shadow finally moves on from wasting his time fighting him, and the pair decide to make a hasty exit. While trying to build up enough speed to teleport out, they run into the ghostly projections of their friends again. Naturally, Sonic doesn't want to leave them behind, but Shadow is adamant that they leave immediately. Which makes sense to a point. He is by far the more logical one between them, but he doesn't even take a second glance at Rouge. This could have easily been handled better. Shadow, of all people, knows the pain of loss, and Rouge has factually been one of his dearest friends and most trusted allies. They could have easily kept him in character and all business by saying, "Sonic, I get it, but these aren't our real friends. We need to get out of here before we decay and lose any chance of saving them." You see what I did there? Our friends. Make it clear he considers them his friends too. Especially Rouge. There's absolutely no need for him to be so emotionally closed off. If everything is canon, then Team Dark is canon, and there's no way a Shadow who was in Team Dark would behave this way. Especially since we now know this series takes place after Team Dark had existed. More on that later. Leaving a destroyed Ghost Green Hill behind them, Sonic and Shadow are left to formulate a plan in the void. Figuring that 9 has most likely brought the shards to complete the prism in the Grim, the pair make their way across the void to find him. Cue a lot of awkward interactions where Sonic tries way too hard to be buddy-buddy with Shadow. It honestly just makes him look kinda pathetic and like he doesn't actually know Shadow at all. Unless he just enjoys making Shadow uncomfortable, and I'm beginning to think that's what's happening here. Pre-Meta era Sonic never behaved this way around Shadow though. There was a mutual respect, and that respect is just impossible to replicate here because Sonic is so utterly ridiculous. It's so frustrating to watch. But based on the previous 2 seasons, I should probably just expect this now. They eventually confront 9 in the Grim, and we find ourselves in the situation where Shadow wants to take him out, and Sonic wants to reason with him. They both agree that if 9 doesn't come round,
then he's mine. No, he's ours.
Oh really, Sonic? Really?
You're a liar!
We do, however, get an explanation of a series-long trope here. When Sonic and Shadow are about to fight Grim Sonic, Sonic exclaims,
"Who or what is that?"
with Shadow responding,
"It's you."
Then Sonic just casually puts the whole question of how people mistake Shadow for him to rest.
Yeah, but if you squint and tilt your head to the side, it's also kinda you.
I'll defer to Shadow for my reaction to this information. We then get a nice fight sequence with Sonic and Shadow taking on Nine's newest creation. Wow, Shadow is really fond of this kick now, isn't he?
A boot to the head.
Once again, Shadow comes out of this fight looking insanely strong. There's no question that the show at least consistently gets that side of things right. But there's a lot more to Shadow than just his strength, so I'm really hoping we get to see his actual character expanded on as we go. The next scene doesn't do much to build my hopes on that though, as when they're confronted by the grim versions of Rouge, Knuckles, Amy, and Birdie, Sonic asks what Nine has done to his friends. His friends. Not a word from Shadow about anyone. Not even Rouge, who he fights with specifically. Rides her like Seabiscuit. Nothing. It really wouldn't have taken much here. Even just saying her name or showing the slightest hesitation when he sees the bot. I honestly have to wonder, is this on instruction by Sega to disregard all Team Dark connections? Or do the show writers just not know enough about the series? Because honestly, it has to be one or the other. And for any long-standing fans watching this, it's just weird. After the two are finally overwhelmed by the sheer number of Grimbots, Nine tells him that all he needs to complete the prism now is some missing prism energy. Maybe because it wasn't obvious enough? Or because in this show Sonic has precisely shit for brains, it takes Shadow to point out that Nine is after the prism energy in Sonic. And because he's seemingly the only one paying attention and is actually willing to take action as opposed to wasting time, he then uses the tornado jump, always awesome to see that again, to launch Sonic out of the Grim and out of Nine's reach. Shadow is now left alone to face down Nine's army of bots, and for the first time we get to see him actually struggle in combat. On a side note, I always laugh at the Vegeta-isms from Dragon Ball that have been projected onto Shadow over the years. Boom and Meta-era Shadow in particular have been guilty of this, but somehow, even though he's written far better than either of those, Prime Shadow has developed a new one. Holding an injured left arm is pretty much one of Vegeta's longest standing traditions, so you're not doing yourself any favors here, Shadow. Anyway, with Sonic now on the run throughout the Shadowverse and Shadow trapped in the Grim, for the next 3 episodes, we follow Sonic and the Shatter Gang as they play cat and mouse with Nine. And we get to play a little game I like to call
Where is Shadow? Where is Shadow? Where is Shadow? Where can Shadow be?
Seriously, I thought Season 2 paced this badly with not seeing him again until Episode 4. In Season 3, it's the 5th episode. And even when eventually the writing on the wall becomes clear to everyone that all the worlds are decaying away into nothing and they have to take the fight to Nine, they spend the whole of Season 4 fighting the same robots, having the same conversations, and not once does Sonic voice any concern for Shadow. Doesn't ask Nine where he is, doesn't make a plan to find him, doesn't even tell any of his army that he's out there somewhere. Like, I get that they obviously wanted to keep him for a specific moment, but it just makes Sonic even less likable and look completely oblivious. Shadow saved you and stayed behind in the Grim, and he doesn't even cross your mind when you get back? It just doesn't make any sense. Shadow finally makes his appearance, saving Sonic from getting curb stomped by a Grimbot. Then cue Sonic making another flaccid attempt to bro down with him as Shadow explains to Sonic that he coped with this 127-hour situation by therapeutically destroying hordes of robot versions of him. But as usual, this just rolls right off Sonic as he suggests they continue doing that very thing. As I've said before, Shadow is a badass in this series. He handles pretty much every fight with ease, while Sonic is constantly getting his face smashed. It's a shame Shadow being good has to be alongside Sonic being meh, but it's still just great we get to see Shadow in action again. And without him being insufferable to listen to. He's full of smack talk when it comes to Sonic, but with his enemies, he's a man of few words and just destroys them. He's also smart. He knew from the start Nine couldn't be trusted, and he instantly figured out that Sonic was all he needed to complete his plan. He knows that Sonic's friends will never be able to deal with the Alphas and breach the fortress, and that the only viable option is to take out Nine, introducing yet again a reason for Shadow and Sonic to be at odds. Through a mixture of guilt and projecting his love for Tails onto Nine, Sonic just can't face the idea of hurting him. But in this series, Shadow is written as a blunt instrument and sees no other way. It does kind of blow to see Shadow dismiss Sonic's value of friendship so easily, because depending on when this show fits in the timeline, and it appears to be set well after 06, Shadow has made some of the most loyal friendships in the entire series. This doesn't line up with his character. Then again, neither did the entire meta era, so maybe they've just given up on him making sense. Kinda makes me wonder about the third Sonic movie, to be honest. But on a lighter note, look at our little socially awkward boy. This does kinda still fall under that try-hard thing Sonic does, where he socially forces himself on Shadow at any opportunity, but this single frame nearly makes it all worth it for me. And it is a kids show too, I'm pretty sure that's exactly why Sonic is the way he is. Anyway, Sonic makes a plan to trick 9 into using up so much Prism energy fighting him that he's forced to power down his Grim Troopers, allowing his friends to easily destroy them. We then go back and forward with the fights a little bit. Out of desperation, 9 accelerates the Grim's decay, counting on Sonic eventually giving himself up to save his friends. Mangy and Sails hijack Big Bot and turn the tide of the fight. Knuckles does to 9 what we've all dreamed of doing. And Shadow beats the last of 9's Alpha Bots while dropping the line we've all been waiting for.
Say the line!
I am the ultimate life form.
But even after all that, and all the attempts at reasoning in the world, 9 isn't going to stop. He literally only stops when he's completely out of options. The same arguments Sonic made to him countless times before suddenly get through to him when he has no other choice, and fixing this whole mess still comes down to potentially sacrificing Sonic's life. Something that he'd already tried to do before and didn't happen because the show wanted 3 episodes of fighting in circles for some reason. But 9 has pushed things too far now, and without Sonic's energy, the Shadowverse will decay into nothing. Understandably, everyone is pretty upset about this, and we get some touching scenes between all the characters who have grown close, and whose baby is this anyway?
Who had sex with what and gave birth to which?
I need to know. Shadow's still trying to be all emotionally withdrawn, just nodding at Sonic as he's about to sacrifice himself. But the mask slips completely when he believes Sonic to actually be dead. Aw, his little ears drooped and everything. Brought me back to Sonic's death scene in 06 actually, and I think Shadow was handled very well in both instances. With the restoration of the Shadowverse now completed by 9, Sonic now has to make it back to Green Hill before he decays. Which, with the help of his friends, and no small thanks to Shadow, he does. See, Shadow's a big softie, really. Would have been nice to get a lot more moments for him like this. Not just with Sonic, but with others too. Basically, everything gets reset and Sonic gets a do-over. At least Shadow gets to be actually somewhat involved in the fight this time, getting to drop his ultimate life form line again, and use Chaos Control to warp the Prism away from Eggman. In a very similar style and pose to Sonic Adventure 2. You really can't go wrong with that. He doesn't, however, get to join everyone when they're just hanging out afterward. Once again, the show puts that distance between him and everyone else. While on the whole, Shadow was absolutely great in this show, I guess my biggest mistake was thinking he would play a bigger role. But in the end, it kind of felt like he just got lumped in with the rest of the sidecast, somehow getting less screen time than most of them, which really only serves to make him appear more like a set piece. Something the show can pull out at intervals for some fan service and a cool fight scene. And that's great and all, but there's a lot more depth to Shadow's character than just being broody and a good fighter. As for the show being canon and where it fits in the series timeline, based on how much Ian Flynn was willing to share, he puts it sometime after Sonic Advance 3. So basically, sometime after 2004. But realistically, it actually has to be sometime after Sonic Colors, because Orbot and Cubot didn't make their first appearances until that game. Well, arguably Orbot was in his prototype form in Unleashed, but the point is Sonic Adventure 2, Heroes, and 06 have all happened before this show. And this just makes no sense for how some of the characters in Prime act, and doesn't explain their dynamics with each other, especially Sonic and Shadow. If you take it at a bare minimum, this show takes place after 06, Sonic and Shadow just don't make any sense. Sonic never ceased to surprise Shadow in the game universe. He had a massive respect for him by the end of his debut game, and while the two did have their differences, he still grew to care about him and never doubted he was always doing what's best for the planet, which is the polar opposite to their dynamic in this show. Here, Shadow is only ever consistently skeptical and disappointed in him, and for good reason because Sonic is written like garbage in this show. But I think the hardest pill for me to swallow is his indifference to Rouge. Their friendship, the formation of Team Dark, their time in Gun, these were some of the best moments in the series. I don't even think we get to see him actually speak to the real Rouge in Prime, never mind even a hint at their friendship with her many Shadowverse versions. It just makes no sense to me. Even less so knowing when this supposedly canon show is set. The pacing issues, as well as how it dropped the ball with some of the extended cast, all could have been resolved by subplots around those other characters, and nobody would have benefited from this more than Shadow. It would have meant avoiding him being MIA so much and actually given the show a chance to delve more into his character, rather than just focusing on his ability to fight. But I think Shadow's biggest problem in this show is that he's defined entirely by that dysfunctional relationship with Sonic. He barely speaks to anyone else at all, and this just railroads him into a specific role because Sonic's character is completely off. I will say it again though, there was still a lot to be happy about with Shadow in this show. Ian Hanlon did a great job bringing Shadow's voice back to something the vast majority of fans enjoy. Shadow was a total badass and force to be reckoned with from start to finish. There was no doubt that the ultimate life form was on his A game when it came to combat. And there were some times that his broody mask slipped, and the softer, and I'm just gonna say it, more popular version of his character shined through. Plus, even if you did hate the show, the fact that events are effectively reset in the end with only Sonic and Shadow remembering them, it kinda means you don't have to bother caring about it if you don't want to. Everything before and after is status quo, exactly as it was. But either way, for better or worse, I always still really enjoy making these analysis videos. It's always interesting to take a look at how these characters are portrayed outside of the games. I love covering Shadow in Season 2, Sonic, Knuckles and Tails in Sonic Movie 2, and I can't wait to cover Shadow again when the third movie hits. So if you're interested in hearing me talk about other characters, maybe Nine's descent into villainy or why Sonic feels so off for me in this show, let me know in the comments if you want to see anything like that. I'm also eager to hear everyone's thoughts on Shadow this season, and your thoughts on the finale as a whole for that matter. Good, bad, somewhere in between? Make sure to sound off below, as I always love reading your comments. Once again, thank you all for helping the channel reach 10k subs. I have tons of stuff planned for the channel and loads of videos in the works, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. I'm thinking I might actually open channel memberships at some point with some cool perks for you guys to enjoy. But in the meantime, if you want to give the channel some extra support, I do have a Patreon, a Buy Me a Coffee page, and you can also drop a super thanks on the video. Patrons get their name displayed at the end of the video, and all your support is very much appreciated. But for now, a big thank you for watching. And as always guys, take care.